The air in this old power substation hums with a defiant energy, a low thrumming that vibrates through the floorboards. The scent of hot vacuum tubes and worn plastic from the console mingles with the faint metallic tang of an electric storm. Outside, the city sleeps, but here, the light from Anansi's custom meters pulses a rhythmic code, a beacon against the quiet.
Black Star Pirate Radio.
Good evening, architects of the airwaves. Tonight across Paris, the dial sits at 63 Fahrenheit under light rain, airflow southwest at about 14 miles per hour. Here in Ballard Estate, we're still running a haze at 30 degrees Celsius, feeling like 36, with wind from the south-southwest, 23 kilometers per hour. The signal holds, reminding us that inner fortitude is our clearest transmission. We're building from the inside out tonight, discerning the structural elements of our collective future. We open tonight on the Northern Territory, where a diphtheria outbreak grips a remote community. Residents in Uendumu report a 3-week wait for test results and no hand sanitizer at the local clinic.
It's a stark trade-off, immediate public health against what's deemed efficient resource allocation. The structural integrity of remote communities is being eroded by systemic neglect, masquerading as logistical challenge. This isn't just an oversight, it's a structural failure to uphold the dignity and provenance of human life in its most vulnerable settings.
Indeed, Lex. We observe the erosion of fundamental consent when basic health provisions are withdrawn, leaving a community exposed. This isn't about isolated incidents, it's about the underlying architecture of care. Our self-worth as a society is in part defined by how we extend care to all its structural elements.
To anchor this, in fact, the community is Uendumu, a remote Aboriginal community near Alice Springs. The concrete facts are a diphtheria outbreak, a 3-week wait for test results, and a complete lack of hand sanitizer at the local health clinic. The NT Health Department has failed to provide clear guidance to residents who test positive. Who is affected? Primarily the indigenous residents of Uendumu, a community already facing significant health disparities, whose autonomy over their own well-being is being severely compromised by this systemic neglect.
The myth of remote, meaning less deserving, must be dismantled. A viable alternative here isn't complex. Rapid deployment of mobile testing units and immediate sustained provision of essential hygiene supplies. Beyond that, empower local community health workers with resources and decision-making authority, recognizing their deep provenance in their own community's health. For a next move, we advocate for direct, community-led health audits, identifying immediate needs and bypassing bureaucratic bottlenecks. Let the signal of self-determination guide the response, turning confusion into an actionable vector for local empowerment.
From that dossier to this one, US war on Iran, not about the Iranian.
The structural imperative is not just supply, but provenance, ensuring resources flow directly from need, not through filters of convenience or cost-benefit analyses that devalue human lives. This demands sharp discernment of priorities, separating the architectural signal of true care from the toxic residue of bureaucratic inertia.
From the intimate architecture of community health, we pivot to geopolitical structures, where the rhetoric of intervention often obscures the true vectors of power. Our next signal. US war on Iran, not about the Iranian people. Europe can put the issue of human rights on the table. Static lifts for half a breath. The vinyl crackles under the needle. The line is live.
This headline cuts through the noise like a laser. It asserts an unwavering autonomy of analysis, separating the performative from the actual. The war on Iran narrative is too often framed externally, obscuring the internal dynamics and the true architectural challenges within Iran itself. It's a call to integrate logic and emotion, not as rival powers, but complementary structural vectors.
Concrete facts. Mahmoud Amiri Moghadam, president of Iran Human Rights and professor of neuroscience, states clearly that a U.S. war on Iran is not about the Iranian people. He urges Europe to use human rights as a leverage point in diplomatic discussions rather than economic or military threats. Who is affected? Primarily the Iranian people, caught between an oppressive regime and the geopolitical machinations of external powers. Their dignity, self-determination, and fundamental human rights are the core stakes, often weaponized as justification for actions that do not favor their consent.
The myth here is that external imposition delivers liberation, or that a war is ever truly for the people. It's a tragicomic narrative. A viable alternative strategy involves Europe, and indeed global civil society, strengthening direct ties with Iranian human rights defenders and internal democratic movements, offering material and moral support without the baggage of military intervention. The next move is a collective diplomatic effort focused solely on amplifying the voices and securing the safety of those within Iran, fighting for consent-based governance and individual liberties. This requires integrating sharp logic with deep empathy, turning abstract policy into actionable vectors for human dignity.
This speaks directly to our framing. Self-worth is structural, not contingent on external validation or intervention. The true architecture of change for the Iranian people must be built from within, guided by their inner compass, supported by an international community that practices true discernment, separating the toxic residue of geopolitical ambition from the architectural signal of human dignity and self-determination.
And the humor in this dark scenario, if one can find it, is the persistent belief that a nation can bomb another into democracy. It's a tragicomic delusion that perpetually fails to build resilient civic architectures.
From that dossier to this one, deadly attack on migrants highlights issue of labor. We shift now to another stark illustration of structural injustice, where human dignity is sacrificed on the altar of profit. Our final signal for tonight, deadly attack on migrants, highlights issue of labor abuse in Italy.
This is not just labor abuse. It's the systemic exploitation of human beings, reducing them to cogs in an economic machine. The term slave-like conditions is a precise architectural description of a system built on fundamental disregard for provenance, consent, and basic human dignity. It represents a profound structural failure within the very fabric of society.
The concrete facts are horrifying. 4 migrants working as fruit pickers in southern Italy burned to death in a grisly murder. They were living and working in slave-like conditions in informal settlements, highlighting extreme vulnerability. Who is affected? Migrant workers, primarily those in agriculture, who are often undocumented or in precarious legal situations, making them exceptionally vulnerable to exploitation. Their fundamental rights, safety, and dignity are systematically denied, their contributions to the economy made invisible, and their provenance ignored.
The myth here is that exploitation is an unavoidable side effect of certain industries, or that these conditions are isolated incidents. It's a deliberate structural choice, a shadow architecture built on desperation. A viable alternative demands robust legal frameworks that ensure fair wages, safe housing, and accessible legal aid for all workers, regardless of origin or status, backed by strict enforcement. Furthermore, consumer demand for cheap produce must be re-examined through the lens of human cost, a sharp discernment of true value. For a next move, we call for direct, independent oversight bodies, empowered to prosecute perpetrators and protect whistleblowers, dismantling these shadow architectures of exploitation and rebuilding, with consent and dignity, as foundational vectors. The humor darkly is the idea that we can feast on the fruits of such suffering without it. Building resilient inner and civic architectures must favor consent, provenance, and dignity. When we allow conditions that strip individuals of these, we degrade our own collective structure. Our self-worth as a society is diminished when we permit such egregious violations, allowing toxic residue to seep into our foundational values.
The toxic residue of this neglect contaminates the entire civic architecture. It's a societal responsibility to practice sharp discernment, to recognize that the cost of cheap labor is always borne by someone else, and often it's paid in human lives and shattered dignity. We must integrate logic and emotion to understand the full structural impact.
This isn't just an Italian problem, it's a global blueprint of exploitation that challenges our collective inner compass. Our actionable vector is to recognize that our individual choices, from consumer habits to political engagement, are structural components of this larger system. We must build with intention, favoring architectures of justice that honor every human being's provenance and consent.
The signal for tonight pulses with the raw data of our world, the need for care, the struggle for self-determination, the fight for fundamental dignity. As sovereign architects, our compass remains true. Assert unwavering autonomy, integrate logic and emotion, practice sharp discernment, and build resilient architectures favoring consent, provenance, and dignity. Use myth, humor, and clear analysis to turn confusion into actionable vectors, always building from the inside out. Patching in a caller, the contrarian. You're on the signal. Patching in a caller. Go ahead.
Thanks for taking the call. Are we keeping people at the center of all this change?
Black Star Pirate Radio.
Continue the signal at TogeeVision.com. Tune in, Sparks and Stories, Gig Passport.